Okay, so while the last proof we did was our problem number 2 for the day from 7.3. I'm not sure if you can read that, but it's number 3 here, the next one from 7.3. So another proof using the quantifier negation rules and the rules for removing and introducing quantifiers, as well as all the rules from chapter 6, the 18 rules. And so we begin by, of course, looking at our conclusion, and we have the predicates A and B in there. But notice that in the one premise that we do have, we only have the predicate A. And so, of course, rather than that creating a panic, what that means is that we need to add in, using the rule of addition, the predicate B at some point. Now, with that in mind, sorry about this, I always forget to start my timer. With that in mind, some people are of the attitude, or have the attitude, that no time like the present. In other words, some people want to add the B predicate right away. Now, I will say, I'm hoping nobody wrote that down. I'm not sure if you're taking notes as you watch this video, but you don't want to write this down. This is going to end up being sort of a dead end. It's not going to actually work out for us doing this. Because, well, we'll see, but the problem is that, yes, we know that we need to add the B predicate, and this in fact starts off looking fairly promising because we can go from this by material implication, right? When you have a tilde out here in the far left, wedges turn into horseshoes. We know that from material implication. However, once we get here, we have the wrong quantifier. That's one problem. We also don't have parentheses around this whole bit. And please understand, you can't just throw parentheses in here. Parentheses are not free, is how I like to say that. Right? So this is sort of ending up to be a bit of a dead end. And so we're going to need to start over here. This is not going to be the best way to start this one. So what we want to do is, before we start adding in our B predicate, we're going to want to do something with our premise, our one and only premise there, break it down a little bit, and then hope for something better to come out of that, or at least give us a better opportunity to add our B predicate to that. All right. Let's try this again. Okay. So what are we going to do with line 1 here, right? There's not a lot to it, so there's maybe not a lot we can do with it. Some people might look at line number 1 and think, well, what we did a lot in 7.2, of course, was remove quantifiers. But this is a very important point. You cannot remove this quantifier because it presently is not the main operator of line 1. Okay? The main operator of line 1 is actually the tilde. In other words, whatever's out here to the far left will always be the main operator. The tilde is the main operator here. And so the way I put it is that this tilde is, in a sense, in the way. If we wanted to remove this quantifier, the tilde is preventing us from doing that because it's off to the far left. And I'm saying this because then that will motivate actually what we want to do with this one. What we want to do with this one is we want to take that tilde that's in the way, preventing us from pulling off this quantifier, and we move it out of the way. And that is what the quantifier negation rule can do for us. So to emphasize, one of the primary uses of the quantifier negation rule is to take tildes that are, so to speak, in the way, that are the main operator because they're out here to the far left of a statement, and we move them over, and so now the main operator is the quantifier, and that means we can remove it, right? Because as we learned in 7.2, you can only remove quantifiers when they are the main operator. So we can remove this quantifier, and we might as well, because what else do we have to do here, right? So we pull off the quantifier. There's not a lot to work with, in other words. We pull off the quantifier. We're going to get tilde A, and of course when we're doing UI, which is what we're doing when we remove the universal quantifier, as we are doing here from line 2, when you're doing UI, you can choose any letter you like right here, A through Z. Remember, that's not really 26 choices. You either want to choose a variable, X, Y, or Z, or an individual constant. And so how do you decide, right, what to use? A variable or an individual constant? Well, what you want to do is you want to look at the conclusion, and we're going to note here that in the conclusion, we're going to go back to a universal quantifier. Right? We're going to end up with a universal quantifier as the main operator of our conclusion. So what that means is that in order to add on a universal quantifier, we know we have to be dealing with variables. And so we want to choose a variable here as a result. Now remember, if you, for whatever reason, inadvertently chose an individual constant for our lowercase letter, like an A through W lowercase, and you get through to the end of the problem, right, and you realize, oh no, I have an individual constant here, I can't add on the universal quantifier, all you would need to do is go back to that first step where you chose to use an individual constant and go back and make them x's, let's say. You could even just cross them out on your work. Okay? So we have a quantifier here, sorry, we have a variable here, tilde ax. We don't have a lot to work with. We do know, however, we're going to need to add bx. Since we really don't have anything else to do here, maybe this is the time we want to do that. And remember that when you add something, like bx in this case, you add it with a wedge only. Addition only works with a wedge. And we're only adding to line 3. And so we get this. And now, okay, we're getting closer. But what we need to do, of course, is we need to turn this wedge into a horseshoe. And fortunately, we have a tilde out here, which makes that fairly convenient. So we do material implication on line 4, taking away the tilde, turning the wedge into a horseshoe. So now, right here, we can ask ourselves, can we go from line 5 to our conclusion? And of course, the answer is yes. Since we have variables here, since we chose to use a variable back here on line 3, we can, in fact, add on the universal quantifier, getting us our conclusion. And so we're done. Okay? So again, just remember, when you're doing universal instantiation, make sure you're choosing the appropriate lowercase letter here. If you're going to add on the universal quantifier at the end, you want to choose a variable. Otherwise, we'll just say that you have more flexibility. But that's what you want to keep in mind here. And you can see how we use both the quantifier negation rules and rules for removing and introducing quantifiers to accomplish this proof.